Roll. Good morning. Good morning. The committee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, the Committee of Standards of Science and Technology meets to consider the following measures. H.R. 2406 to authorize the National Institute of Standards and Technology to increase its efforts in support of the integration of healthcare information enterprises in the United States. H.R. 3877, the Mine Communications Technology Innovation Act, and H.R. 1834, the National Ocean Exploration Program Act. And as we start, I want to welcome back Mike Queer. Mike is the brains and the inspiration for particularly the healthcare bit of this. As we pointed out the other day, and Mr. Hall in his was very complimentary. Mike had a stroke recently, complicated by some other matters. He is back, and we are glad you are here, Mike. You're very important to the entire committee. We now proceed with the markup, and I will begin with a brief statement. Today, the committee meets to mark up 3 bills dealing with a wide range of issues. The first bill we will mark up, H.R. 2406, deals with the issue of healthcare information technology. The broad use of IT in the healthcare sector could have far-reaching benefits, including saving tens of billions of dollars per year, and that's tens of billions of dollars for both the taxpayers as well as for patients, improving the quality of Medicare and reducing dangerous medical errors. But meeting the challenge of developing and maintaining such a system is not simple. In order to achieve broad implementation, we need widely accepted technical standards that will let healthcare IT systems interoperate while protecting patient privacy. H.R. 2406 authorizes the National Institute of Standards and Technology to increase its efforts to support the integration of healthcare IT in the United States, to develop or adopt existing technical healthcare IT standards for federal agencies, and to create a universal grant program for multidisciplinary research in healthcare IT. And I thank Mr. Wu for that addition. The bill is based on recommendations of a report by the President's Information Technology Advisory Committee in 2004 and a study by the National Academies in 2005. The next bill we will mark up is H.R. 3877, which addresses the issue of underground mine communication technology. Tragedies in West Virginia and Utah over the last few years have given us a painful illustration for the need for robust emergency communications in mines. H.R. 3877 authorizes research and standards development programs to address the important challenge of communication technology for underground mines. The bill authorizes an R&D and standards development program at NIST to promote development of innovative communications and tracking technologies of underground mines. To be clear, this bill is not in any way diminish the role of the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. NIST's efforts to promote improved communication technology through R&D and technical standards only supports the National Institute's important work, and I want to thank Mr. Matheson for bringing this very important and timely issue to us. Finally, we will consider H.R. 1834, introduced by our colleague on the Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Saxon. Mr. Saxon is not fortunate enough to be a part of this committee, but we welcome his good input. The National Ocean Exploration and National Underseas Research Program Act formally authorizes 2 programs at NOAA that have made important contributions to our knowledge of the oceans and develop technologies that enable us to explore these vast areas of the planet. Once again, the committee has 3 good bills in front of it, which to address 3 different but critical issues. And once again, we are marking up both Republican and Democratic bills because I've said before, good ideas are good ideas regardless of where they might originate, and I urge my colleagues to support each of these bills. I now recognize Mr. Hall to present his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you very ably pointed out, I'm pleased and our side of the docket is pleased that this committee is marking up 3 good bills today. H.R. 2406 will certainly help clarify and codify NIST's role in the integration of health information technology. NIST has played a very important role in health information technology through their work with the Department of Health and Human Services, and this legislation helps them to continue that vital role as we develop interoperability standards. H.R. 3877 offers another opportunity to clarify NIST's role in the important area of mine communications technology. As the tragedy in Utah unfortunately illustrates, we have a lot of work to do to improve communications between surface personnel and underground miners so as to advance miner health and safety. And finally, H.R. 1834 authorizes two programs that are already in existence at NOAA, the Ocean Exploration Program and the National Undersea Research Program. These are two excellent initiatives, and it's time we codify their goals and objectives in the law. I'd like to thank you and your staff for working with us and to improve these bills and craft good policy. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Without objection, members may place statements in the record at any point. We will now consider H.R. 2406 to authorize the National Institute of Standards and Technology to increase its efforts in support of the integration of healthcare information enterprise in the United States, and I yield myself 5 minutes to describe the bill. The goal of H.R. 2406 is to promote the adoption and utilization of information technology in the healthcare community and creation of an interoperable and secure network of electronic healthcare records. There is a general consensus that the result of fully utilized information technology would be to lower cost, and when I mean lower cost, I mean billions of dollars in lower cost for both the federal government as well as for patients, and to improve patient care. Regardless of its acknowledged benefits, the use of IT by the healthcare community remains low and lags far behind other segments of our economy, such as financial services, banking, manufacturing, and e-business. In January, I started holding a series of roundtables with the healthcare community to identify the barriers to their use of IT. What I discovered was concern about the lack of interoperability between the different healthcare IT systems, as well as serious reservations about the security, confidentiality, and privacy of patient data in electronic format were major issues of healthcare community. In a world of electronic information, these issues can only be resolved through development of technical standards, and these standards currently do not exist in any comprehensive form. NIST already has a proven track record in this type of work. One reason IT has been so heavily utilized in the banking, financial services, and e-business, telecommunications, and manufacturing has been NIST's support for the development of interoperability and security standards in those sectors. H.R. 2406 builds upon NIST's proven track record. In addition, H.R. 2406 implements the recommendations of the President's Information Technology Advisory Committee, report Revolutionizing Healthcare Through Information Technology, and the National Academies of Engineering and the Institute of Medicine's report, Building a Better Delivery System, an engineering healthcare partnership. H.R. 2406 also incorporates the recommendations and views that the T&I subcommittee received at its hearing. In addition, H.R. 2406 authorizes activities which NIST identifies as areas where they could do more work and make significant contributions to the healthcare field. Later, I will also be offering a manager's amendment to H.R. 2406. This amendment reflects the comments the committee received during our September hearing on the bill and in consultation with NIST. I want to thank Dr. Gingrey and his staff for their input in making this amendment even a better amendment. I would encourage the adoption of this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to support the bill. I now recognize Mr. Hall to present any remarks on the bill.
Chairman, I thank you, and I too would like to express my support for H.R. 2406, a bill to authorize NIST efforts to assist in the development of health information technology standards. America has the most advanced healthcare system in the world, and our doctors and scientists have extended and improved the lives of people worldwide. Our nation offers cutting-edge research and technologies to offer hope to millions of people. However, despite these amazing advancements, our healthcare system is hampered by outdated record keeping. Far too many patients suffer from paper record areas and mistakes arising from the inability to get timely information to healthcare providers. Indeed, several studies indicate that our country could save tens of billions of dollars annually by moving to electronic healthcare records. But in order for that to happen, we need to have clear interoperability standards for industries to follow so that we can safely and securely share electronic data between computer networks. This legislation will codify the role that NIST plays in advancing health information technology standards. I'd like to thank Dr. Gingrey also, as you have, Mr. Chairman, for working so closely with our staff and yours in this legislation, and I want to yield the balance of my time to him to speak on the bill. But before I close, I want to acknowledge Mike Cure's excellent work on this legislation. He's worked long and hard on the topic over the last few months and years, and his efforts have contained even while he was recuperating from his illness. And I've worked with him as a Democrat, and I've worked with him as a Republican, and you can't hook him up wrong. We're awfully glad to have him back. With that, I yield the balance of my time to the distinguished member from Georgia, Dr. Gingrey.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I thank the ranking member for yielding time to me to make an opening statement as well, and it's been great to work with you on truly an important bill in a bipartisan fashion. And I want to openly express my support, indeed, for H.R. 2406. Together over the past few weeks since our last hearing, you and I have worked closely to make some very crucial changes to this bill so that it will best capture the role of NIST and the use of their technical expertise in assisting with the future of standards development and health information technology. As you know and have already stated, health information technology is a topic of great importance to me as a physician member of this body. And so, indeed, I appreciate you putting forth this important legislation, and I am excited to see the immense amount of positive impact your bill will have on properly developing interoperability standards for HIT. As I've stated many times before, health information technology is indeed one of the most promising ways to tackle today's problems of skyrocketing healthcare costs. According to a recent RAND study, a correctly implemented and widely adopted interoperable HIT system would save the American healthcare system more than, and it's already been said, billions of dollars, but the RAND study actually said more than $160 billion annually, so we're talking about a huge amount of savings. In addition to this immense cost savings, there's a possibility that, according to a recent Institute of Medicine study, a properly implemented HIT would eliminate medical errors that lead to almost 100,000 deaths every year. Now, this was a report by Institute of Medicine a number of years ago, and I think that they're probably pretty accurate. Health information technology is and should continue to be a priority in Washington. Reaching our full potential in the most efficient and effective way is essential to providing the best future health care and taxpayer return to our American people, and I believe that NIST is a vital play in this arena. In the words of NIST themselves, NIST has a strong history in serving as a neutral third party and addressing sensitive measurement issues and have had a reputation of success because they have been committed to their scope of assisting in and working closely with the development of best practices of standards using these high levels of technical expertise. This is not to be confused with developing the best practices guidelines themselves. Therefore, I'm so glad that Chairman Gordon put forth this legislation that focuses on the technical expertise that NIST will officially bring to the table in assisting ongoing efforts to the creation and implementation of HIT interoperability. So I want to commend the chairman. I think that this is a good bill. I've got a second degree amendment that I'll offer at a later time, but I thank the chairman and look forward to the successful markup of this bill, and that will continue to capture the strength of H.R. 2406.
Thank you, Dr. Gingrey, for your really helpful first-hand information on this issue. Does anyone else wish to be recognized?
Chairman.
Mr. Bartlett is recognized.
I'd just like to note that our country really doesn't have much of a healthcare system. We have a really good sick care system, the best in the world. And I would hope that we can move toward more of a healthcare system so that we will have less and less need for our really good sick care system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. You always add to our body of information. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? I ask unanimous consent that the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that the member proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster without objection. So ordered. The first amendment on the roster is the manager's amendment offered by the chair. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 2406, offered by Mr. Gordon of Tennessee.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading without objection. So ordered. I recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the amendment. This amendment makes some important improvements to H.R. 2406. It reflects the helpful comments the committee received from witnesses and stakeholders during our September hearing on the bill and in consultation with NIST and with Ranking Member Hall and Mr. Gingrey. Specifically, the amendment makes clear that NIST activities will complement, not compete, against the work of the National Coordinator of Department of Health and Human Services by conducting work on technical standards for HIT. It also ensures that NIST will fully participate in the development of technical standards and guidelines in cooperation and collaboration with the private sector. The amendment emphasizes that NIST will focus on technical security issues. It is not the intent of the committee that NIST should become engaged in privacy policy issues. Finally, the amendment strikes the language creating the Senior Interagency Council on Federal Healthcare Information Technology Infrastructure to avoid redundancy and makes additional minor corrections. I would strongly urge adoption of the amendment, and I would like to ask counsel if Mike is here, if Mr. Gingrey had a good suggestion that the 12-month study be increased to 18 months. Was that included in this amendment? Do we know, was that included? Okay, excuse me. I think that speaks for itself then. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote occurs up on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The second amendment on the roster is offered by Mr. Hill. There's Mr. Hill. The gentleman from Indiana, are you ready to proceed with your amendment?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 2406, offered by Mr. Hill of Indiana.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for introducing this important piece of legislation. Moving our health information technology into the 21st century can both save money and improve the quality of care for patients. By increasing health IT capabilities, medical professionals will better be able to access critical health information of patients. And by streamlining health information retrieval, we can better ensure higher quality of care for patients. We currently have the technology to make this possible. The Chairman's bill is a terrific start, and my amendment would improve the facilitation of this transition. My amendment would direct the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, and the National Science Foundation, NSF, to create a task force comprised of other federal agencies and private industry groups to develop a strategic plan for implementation of healthcare technologies and classifications. This roadmap would provide several important recommendations, including the following: a plan for the development, adoption, and maintenance of terminologies and classifications, a plan for gaining the commitment of stakeholders to principles and guidelines for this process, and a plan to design a centralized authority or governance model to maintain the program. 18 months after this legislation is enacted, the task force would report its findings back to the Science Committee, where we can then debate and enact further legislation if we deem it necessary. Mr. Chairman, my amendment would begin the process of bringing stakeholders together and develop strategies that will move us forward. My amendment is endorsed by the American Health Information Management Association and the American Medical Informatics Association. Mr. Chairman, this basically does one thing. According to the old Bible scriptures, there's the Tower of Babel, where we have many different languages. This amendment tears down the Tower of Babel and creates a common language that's so important to deliver health technology. So I ask unanimous consent to insert the support letter of the American Health Information Management Association and the American Medical Informatics Association into the record. And Mr. Chairman, I thank you for bringing a well-drafted bill that addresses a critical area of need for our country, and I urge adoption of my amendment.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Dr. Gingrey is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I do rise in opposition to this amendment, and really because I think we end up getting too much babbling, as Mr. Hill mentioned. There is already a task force underway designed to achieve the ends of the Hill Amendment. The American Health Information Community, AHIC, is a federal advisory body chartered in 2005 to make recommendations to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on how to accelerate the development and adoption of HIT, including terminologies and classifications. Since 2005, the federal government has already spent $122 million for activities related to coordinating health information technology, and the President has budgeted $118 million for fiscal year 2008. In addition, AHIC and the National Library of Medicine are already working on medical terminologies and definitions. The Office of the National Coordinator at the Department of Health and Human Services also established the Health Information Technology Standards Panel, HITSI. And this is a public-private partnership with broad participation across more than 300 health-related organizations for the purpose of identifying and harmonizing data and technical standards for healthcare. So I say establishing a new task force that is run through NIST and NSF is not only redundant, but it also may slow the forward progress that is already being made by AHIC and HITSB. Indeed, AHIC has already recommended adoption of some standards, and several have already been rolled out. So this amendment would go against NIST's core competency and instead saddle NIST with, I think, responsibilities that are outside of their expertise. NIST has never been a body that set standards. They take an agreed-upon policy and then develop the technical standards around that policy. While this amendment does not task them with setting standards, it does put them in charge of a task force that creates recommendations for the development and adoption of terminologies and classifications. Moreover, as head of this task force, NIST is also charged with creating recommendations for the design of a centralized authority on this topic. Both of these roles, I think, are beyond the scope of NIST. So I think that this amendment unduly complicates an otherwise good bipartisan bill. And again, I think you got too much babbling, quite honestly. It brings in another agency that was not part of the mix before. It's not clear why NIST would consult specifically with the National Science Foundation. In addition, this amendment does not clarify what NSF will do exactly. So, for these reasons, Mr. Chairman, I respectfully oppose the Hill Amendment. And I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Gingrey. Let me, I think those are very thoughtful comments. Let me give you some background on the origin of this amendment. These were stakeholders that came to the committee with these recommendations, and I guess this somewhat simplifies it, but I think the way to look at this is that our original bill looks at interoperability on a national basis. What this adds another level to it, and that is it helps to look at it on a more international basis. The reason that's important, as you know now, oftentimes x-rays that are taken during the day might be read and developed in India or Australia during our night, their day, sent back to us. I think this can add to additional savings. I think you can add, hopefully, to exports, as our stakeholders told us. The reason that the National Science Foundation has a very small role here, consultant role, is they deal with the international business community. They are best able to help us with that international piece of it. We, as always, will continue to work with you as we go through this process, as we go to the Senate and beyond. We continue to want to make a good bill better, but from all that I have seen and heard, I think Mr. Hill's amendment does improve an already good bill. And I would also, and I was reminded that this is just a report also, an advisory report. Mr. Hill's right.
Mr. Chairman, in my opening remarks, I asked for unanimous consent to insert letters of endorsement from the American Health Information Management Association and the American Medical Informatics Association, so I would repeat that request.
And, Mr. Chairman, may I ask, did you amend your amendment to, at the request of Mr. Gingrey, to change the report time from 12 months to 18 months?
I did.
We've changed it from 12 months to 18 months, and that amendment was requested by the gentleman from Georgia, and we've conceded to that request.
Chairman?
Mr. Hall's recognized.
Just say a word or so in opposition to the amendment. And when he goes biblical on that, it reminds me of Billy Graham saying he loved the sinner, but he hated the sin. And I crazy about the author of this bill here, admire him very much, worked with him long ago, and it's a good man. But, you know, and all these folks that you mentioned, they're for this because they're part of the task force. I don't blame them for supporting this amendment. It's not the worst amendment in the world, but why not use HHS since they're developing this already? And this is already a task force here, and it seemed like it's a little redundant. It's not a killer of the bill, but I had hoped that these two men, so thoughtful, both of them, and so knowledgeable, could get together and work out something that we could agree on. I'd give back my time. I realize I haven't hardly said anything.
But you do it well, though, and thank you, Mr. Dr. Ehlers is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm afraid I'll probably say more than the previous speaker, but it'll mean less. These people from Texas have a way of saying a lot in very few words. I just have to express some concerns about this, the amendment to inclusion of NSF. NSF has a lot on its plate. I don't think it has any particular expertise in this area that we want to draw on, because they do not, the NSF excels not so much by having a lot of expertise in-house, but by giving grants to people who do have a lot of expertise and do a lot of research and perform extremely well for our nation. And that has been NSF's role, and I'm not sure why we want to include NSF. Let me also express a concern about an even bigger issue. I noticed that the funding for this bill is going to come out of the American Competes funds. The funding for Mr. Melson's bill that's coming up is coming out of the funding for the American Competes Act. I never, on any stretch of imagination, thought that money was going to go to ongoing projects like this. The whole idea is to improve our education programs in math and science, improve our manufacturing capabilities, improve our ability to compete with other countries. And we're not really competing that much with healthcare, except for the people who fly to Thailand to get surgery at 10% of the cost. I hope this is not a trend, that every bill that comes along that needs money, we're going to say, well, we'll take it out of the American Competes Act. On the surface, and I don't like to accuse anyone of subterfuge, but it seems a way to get around the paygo requirements that the current Congress has. I really have to register extreme reservations about starting to use the American Competes Act to fund all the little bills that we come up with here, and pretty soon we'll defeat the overall goal. And I know, Mr. Chairman, you've worked very, very hard on the American Competes Act, and I totally agree with you and supported you at every turn of the road on that. But I just want to throw up a caution flag here and say, hey, wait a minute, that's not what I thought we were going to use that money for. With that, I will yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Ehlers. Let me, again, you always have a very thoughtful approach to this. I'll make a couple of suggestions. First of all, as you know, the budget for NIST in American Competes Act was doubled. You say that we're not competing with other countries in terms of health care, i.e. Thailand or whatever might be the case. The fact of the matter is, I would say that we are in dramatic competition because our health care cost is the most rapid growing part of any business's bills. You know, if you look at automobiles right now, we talk about automobiles not being competitive. The reason is, to a great extent, the reason is the health care costs. So clearly, by getting our health care costs down, I think it does make us more competitive. I agree with you that this should not be a kitty that we go to for every pet cause. I very sincerely think that reducing our health care costs makes us more competitive on an international basis. And I certainly yield to Mr. Ehlers Dr. Ehlers for any other comments.
Well, obviously, I'm well aware of the automobile situation. Being from Michigan, the problem is not just health care costs, but the fact that the auto companies gave lifetime health benefits to retirees who were retiring at age 55 and weren't expected to live that long. So they dug themselves, both the unions and the companies dug themselves into a huge hole. I recognize the competitive aspects of health care, and but that's not really what the American Competes Act was getting at. I'm struck by the comment that Mr. Bartlett made before he left, and what he says is very true. I was struck some years ago when I spent a year in Germany, and at that time we referred to our health care as hospitalization insurance. Over there it was called health care. Well, we have changed, but we haven't changed the motif of health care in this country. The reason the Europeans call it that is because it's largely preventive, to reduce costs through prevention, which we handle it through public health agencies here and never give them enough money. I'm not trying to get into a major argument here, but I just want to comment. There's a lot of factors in healthcare costs other than IT, and I'm not sure that really affects the competitiveness as much as we would like. But I won't make a big issue of it now. I'm just serving notice that I've got some pirates waiting to board the ship if this happens again and again. Thank you.
I think you're a good conscience on that issue, and as you should be. I would say, as Everett Dirksen said, a billion here, billion there starts to add up. As Dr. Gingrich pointed out, this is hundreds of billions of dollars. It can make a big difference. Okay, is there further discussion on the amendment? Dr. Baird.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate very much my ranking member and friend, Dr. Ehlers' comments about NSF, and just wonder if the author of the bill or someone might enlighten us about the rationale for including NSF and if they've had a chance to discuss this with NSF to see what they would add or whether that would detract from their mission.
If the gentleman would yield to me. Again, this amendment was developed in response from the stakeholders. In trying to take this from more of a national interoperability to the potential to have international interoperability, the national NSF is a point of contact for much of our international scientific work, and it really is not a matter. I mean, it is I wouldn't say they are a major component of this, but it is an effort to bring to better the best that we all can in incremental parts, and that was the reason. This will continue to be flushed out as the chairman of the committee that oversees NSF. We want to continue to get your input on this as we go through the process, through the Senate, through conference, and we want to get the best bill possible. The bill that was introduced wasn't the best bill possible. The bill we have today, wasn't the best bill. We've amended it, and I think we could probably continue to do so.
I appreciate that, and I think NSF does have a strong international component, and that is certainly a worthy aspect of this amendment, and I intend to support the amendment. But I would like to, down the road, before final passage, at least have some discussions with NSF and see what specifically they feel they can add to this debate, and make sure that it's not drawing resources unnecessarily from an already fairly stretched entity.
If the gentleman will yield, I think that's well said. If you look at the wording, it says in consultation with the director of the National Science Foundation. So it is, in essence, to ask them if they have value added. If they say they don't have value added, then we move on.
I appreciate very much the explanation. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to be?
Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Gingrich.
I have a second-degree amendment to the Hill Amendment. And
Amendment to H.R. 2406, offered by Mr. Gingrich of Georgia to the amendment offered by Mr. Hill of Indiana.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And first of all, I do want to thank Representative Hill. As he knows, I had 2 second-degree amendments to offer. One, of course, was to extend the time period for NIST to report back to the committee. I think the amendment, the original Hill amendment, was 9 months, actually a total of 12 months, 3 months to form the committee, and 9 months to report back. That amendment, that second-degree amendment, would just simply say, and this was at NIST's request, that's not enough time to give them, instead of 12 months, actually 18 months, a year and a half. I want to thank Mr. Hill for accepting that amendment and making that a part of his amendment, an amendment to his amendment. So I don't have to offer that second-degree amendment. The other one, though, that I'm offering now is just simply to strike language that says, in consultation with the director of the National Science Foundation. And as I mentioned in my remarks, in opposition to the Hill Amendment, I felt that indeed it brings in yet another agency that was not part of the mix before, and as been stated, I think more eloquently than I by Dr. Ehlers, it's really not clear why NIST would consult specifically with the NSF, and I think actually Dr. Baird just expressed some concerns too. What exactly do they bring to the table? I'm not clear, and so I think that this amendment would just simply get them out of the mix. We've got, as Mr. Hill said in describing his amendment, and making a reference, an analogy to the Tower of Babel. Sometimes you can put too many cooks and spoil the broth, and I don't really think we need NSF in here. So that's the amendment, and it just simply strikes that language. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Baird is recognized.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Gingrich's comments, gentleman from Georgia, but I think with the chair having pointed out that the language with the NSF basically involving the consultation, given that NSF already has groups working on this, given their international reach, at that level, if we were mandating a whole new operation for NSF, I would perhaps be supportive of Mr. Gingrich's amendment, but the notion that we're just consulting with NSF, I think is a sound judgment, and so therefore I would urge Mr. Gingrich to perhaps consider withdrawing the portion of his amendment that specifically rules out NSF. If we're asking one of our top science agencies in this country to give us consultation on a matter of this importance, I think that makes sense, and I would support the original language and urge defeat of the amendment, of this particular amendment.
Thank you, Dr. Baird. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no further discussion, the vote occurs on Dr. Gingrich's amendment to the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. No. In the judgment of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman, could I have a recorded vote?
Certainly.
Please?
The roll will be called.
Chairman Gordon.
No.
Chairman Gordon votes no. Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello votes no. Ms. Johnson. Ms. Woolsey. Mr. Udall. Mr. Udall votes no. Mr. Wu. Mr. Baird. Mr. Baird votes no. Mr. Miller. Mr. Lipinski. Mr. Lipinski votes no. Mr. Lampson. Mr. Lampson votes no. Ms. Giffords. Ms. Giffords votes no. Mr. McNerney. Mr. McNerney votes no. Ms. Richardson. Ms. Richardson votes no. Mr. Konjorski. Ms. Hooley. Ms. Hooley votes no. Mr. Rothman. Mr. Rothman votes no. Mr. Matheson. Mr. Matheson votes no. Mr. Ross. Mr. Ross votes no. Mr. Chandler. Mr. Chandler votes no. Mr. Carnahan. Mr. Carnahan votes no. Mr. Malasa. Mr. Malasa votes no. Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill votes no. Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell votes no. Mr. Wilson. Mr. Hall. Mr. Hall votes aye. Mr. Sensenbrenner. Mr. Lamar Smith. Mr. Roybacher. Mr. Bartlett. Mr. Ehlers. Mr. Ehlers votes aye. Mr. Lucas. Mr. Lucas votes aye. Mrs. Biggert. Mrs. Biggert votes aye. Mr. Aiken. Mr. Aiken votes aye. Mr. Bonner. Mr. Feeney. Mr. Feeney votes aye. Mr. Nagelbauer. Mr. Nagelbauer votes aye. Mr. Inglis. Mr. Inglis votes aye. Mr. Reichert. Mr. McCall. Mr. McCall votes aye. Mr. Diaz-Bolart. Mr. Diaz-Bolart votes aye. Mr. Gingrey. Mr. Gingrey votes aye. Mr. Bilbray. Mr. Adrian Smith. Mr. Adrian Smith votes aye. Mr. Brown.
Still from California.
Mr. Roybacher? Okay, Mr. Roybacher votes aye.
Mr. Wu?
Mr. Wu is not recorded. Mr. Wu votes no.
And how's Ms. Woozy recorded?
Ms. Woolsey is not recorded. Ms. Woolsey votes no.
Happy birthday, Ms. Woolsey. Is there anyone who has not had their vote recorded? If not, the clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, 20 members vote aye and, 13 members vote aye and 20 members vote no.
Thank you. The amendment fails, amendment to the amendment fails. And let me just quickly say, we spent a lot of time on a very small but important part of this bill because we have spent months on the rest of the bill and have worked it out to get a very, very good bill. And I thank everyone for this constructive last effort, and it will continue as we go on to the Senate and to the conference. The vote now occurs on Mr. Hill's amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. It appears the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Is there,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to record a vote on that, please.
The clerk will call the roll.
Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Chairman Gordon votes aye. Mr. Costello. Mr. Costello votes aye. Ms. Johnson. Ms. Woolsey. Ms. Woolsey votes aye. Mr. Udall. Mr. Wu. Mr. Wu votes aye. Mr. Baird. Mr. Baird votes aye. Mr. Miller. Mr. Lipinski. Mr. Lipinski votes aye. Mr. Lampson. Mr. Lampson votes aye. Ms. Giffords. Ms. Giffords votes aye. Mr. McNerney. Mr. McNerney votes aye. Ms. Richardson? Ms. Richardson votes aye. Mr. Kanjorski? Mr. Kanjorski votes aye. Ms. Hooley? Ms. Hooley votes aye. Mr. Rothman? Mr. Rothman votes aye. Mr. Matheson? Mr. Matheson votes aye. Mr. Ross? Mr. Ross votes aye. Mr. Chandler? Mr. Chandler votes aye. Mr. Carnahan? Mr. Carnahan votes aye. Mr. Malasa? Mr. Malasa votes aye. Mr. Hill? Mr. Hill votes aye. Mr. Mitchell? Mr. Mitchell votes aye. Mr. Wilson? Mr. Hall? Mr. Hall votes no. Mr. Sensenbrenner? Mr. Lamar Smith? Mr. Roybacher? Mr. Roybacher votes no. Mr. Bartlett? Mr. Ehlers? Mr. Ehlers votes no. Mr. Lucas? Mr. Lucas votes no. Mrs. Biggert? Mrs. Biggert votes no. Mr. Aiken? Mr. Aiken votes no. Mr. Bonner? Mr. Feeney? Mr. Feeney votes no. Mr. Nagelbauer? Mr. Nagelbauer votes no. Mr. Inglis? Mr. Inglis votes no. Mr. Reichert? Mr. McCall? Mr. McCall votes no. Mr. Diaz-Bolart? Mr. Diaz-Bolart votes no. Mr. Gingrey? Mr. Gingrey votes no. Mr. Bilbray? Mr. Adrian Smith? Mr. Adrian Smith votes no. Mr. Brown?
How is Senator Udall reported?
Mr. Udall is not recorded. Mr. Udall votes aye.
Is there anyone else that has not been recorded? Mr. Kajorski was. He was. The clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, 21 members vote aye and 13 members vote no.
The amendment passes. Are there other amendments? If no, then the vote is on the bill, H.R. 2406, as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I recognize Mr. Lamson to offer a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee favorably report H.R. 2406 as amended to the House with the recommendation that the bills do pass. Furthermore, I move that the staff be instructed to prepare the legislative report to make necessary technical and conforming changes, and that the chairman take all necessary steps to bring the bill before the House for consideration.
The question is on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the desk. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure, ending Monday, October the 29th at 9 a.m. I move pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 22 of the Rules of the House of Representatives that the committee authorize the chairman to offer such motions as may be necessary in the House to adopt and pass H.R. 2406 to authorize the National Institute of Standards and Technology to increase its effort in support of the integration of healthcare information enterprise in the United States as amended without objection. So ordered. We now consider H.R. 3877, the Mine Communications Technology Innovation Act. I yield the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Matheson, 5 minutes to describe his bill.
Well, thank you, Chairman Gordon, and I also want to thank both you and Ranking Member Hall for your help on this matter. This legislation is very important to me because I've been working on the aftermath of the disaster at the Crandall Canyon Mine, which is in my congressional district. I think we all remember it was on August 6th that 6 miners were trapped when rocks and debris exploded off the walls of the tunnels where they were working, more than 1,800 feet underground. During the rescue attempt that followed, further disaster struck when underground activity caused a burst of rubble to explode off the cavern wall, and that killed 3 rescuers at the time. Now, one of the most difficult aspects of the Crandall Canyon mine collapse was not knowing where the trapped miners were when the cave-in occurred. It made for an excruciating ordeal for the families, the mine owner, and the mine rescuers. I think everyone in this room, if you watched on television, you remember that there's this frustrating scenario where multiple holes were being drilled down from the surface, but it was clear that it wasn't known exactly where the trapped miners were, and each hole that was drilled wouldn't find any sign of the miners.
And I think a lot of us felt frustration at the time about thinking we can communicate and get images from from the surface of Mars. We can't seem to get communication to establish where these miners are underground. Mines generally have reliable communication systems in place, but most mines have properties that make implementation of current technology difficult. The problem is the open-air pathway required for radio signals and Wi-Fi do not exist, and less than 10% of the radio spectrum used above ground can be used underground. Because of the challenges of the mine environment and the limited nature of the market, much-needed technology has not yet been developed or is not commercially available. So the purpose of this legislation is to accelerate the development of innovative next-generation mine tracking and communications technology. My legislation directs the National Institute of Standards and Technology to establish an initiative to promote the research, development, and demonstration of miner tracking and communication systems, and to promote the establishment of standards and other measurement services regarding underground mines. As the chairman indicated in his remarks at the start of this hearing, this is a narrowly targeted R&D bill. It does not infringe on other committees' jurisdictions in the House when it comes to mine safety issues. I think it's a critical issue that ought to be addressed in order to better protect our miners. And again, both Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Hall, I thank you for your cooperation on this, and I'll yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Matheson. I recognize Mr. Hall to present any remarks.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you and your staff for taking some time to sit down and to work on a manager's amendment to this bill. There's a clear agreement that NIST has the expertise needed to draft standards for communication equipment in mines and other subterranean environments and foster development of those systems through best practices, measurement services, and research evaluation. This bill, as amended, would substantially contribute to the health and safety of miners. Specifically, NIST has long been a leader in communications research technology and has the equipment and expertise to characterize the mine environment and determine what techniques are best suited for these difficult conditions. However, many members of the committee and I were concerned that the bill, as introduced, went beyond NIST's core competencies to include technology development activities beyond their scope and duplicative of efforts currently underway at NIOSH. Under the 2006 Miner Act, NIOSH has received significant funding to lead an interagency program to develop communication, tracking, oxygen supply, and refuge systems for mines. And to date, this program has invested over $23 million and is steadily progressing toward installation of new, safer communication systems in 2009. And it's my understanding that the manager's amendment ensures that any activity undertaken by NIST will complement the larger effort already underway at NIOSH. And while I'm pleased with the manager's amendment, I do believe this committee could have crafted an even better bill if we'd been given the time necessary to craft this legislation by the regular order. While I realize that time is not in an overabundant supply in these halls at this time, and the chair has reason to move this bill quickly to the floor, it's my hope that this will be an exception to the rule of carefully considering and widely disseminating legislation from this committee. And the policy in this amended bill, however, is one I hope the entire committee can support. The bill creates a basic framework to ensure that the government's research agencies work cooperatively, effectively, and quickly to improve mine safety. And the world-renowned capabilities of the NIST laboratories can significantly improve implementation of emergency communications and tracking systems in mines, and I do support passage of the amendment bill today. Now, yield back my time, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Let me say that your thoughtful, constructive comments were certainly noted, and you, I think, are correct. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to compliment Mr. Matheson on bringing this matter to the committee and hopefully passing this bill. The mine tragedy in Utah was just another one in a long line of mine tragedies in this country. We have experienced the same sort of thing in my home state of Kentucky. And I believe that we ought to do everything in our power to protect our miners. This is an effort to do it. Communications are vital, and I applaud Mr. Matheson and the chairman and the ranking member for moving on this thing. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Dr. Gingrich.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I echo the sentiments expressed by Mr. Hall in regard to some of his concerns about regular order, but let me just compliment the gentleman from Utah. His heart's in the right place, no question about it. The gentleman from Kentucky knows of what he speaks, and if we had a member here from West Virginia, I'm sure they would echo those same sentiments. So we understand from this side, while we like regular order and would like to have had a little bit more time, that in this particular instance, time is of the essence, and so I commend Mr. Matheson for the bill, and I certainly support it.
Does anyone else wish to comment on the bill? If not, again, Mr. Matheson, this bill is going to save lives and heartache for a lot of families. Thank you for bringing this to us. I ask unanimous consent that the resolution is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that members proceed with the amendment in order of the roster.
Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, the first amendment is on the roster is the manager's amendment offered by the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Matheson. Are you prepared with your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am. Thank you.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 3877 offered by Mr. Matheson of Utah.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman from Utah for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the tradition of this committee, working in close consultation with both majority and minority staff, we drafted a manager's amendment that I think better defines the purpose of this research program to fit within NIST's set of core competencies. Very briefly, these changes include the establishment of best practices, adaptation of existing technology for mine communication, and measurement services for mine communications. Additionally, this amendment clarifies that NIST is well-positioned to accelerate the development of consensus standards rather than draft those standards. The amendment includes several other technical changes and does not make any changes to authorization language. Again, I thank the cooperation on both sides of the aisle on developing this manager's amendment. I urge its adoption, and I'll yield back my time.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Are there other amendments? If no, then the vote occurs on the bill. H.R. 3877 is amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I recognize Mr. Lamson to offer a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee favorably report H.R. 3877 as amended to the House with the recommendation that the bill do pass. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the legislative report and make necessary technical and conforming changes, and that the chairman take all necessary steps to bring the bill before the House for consideration.
Question on the motion to report the bill favorably. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure, ending Monday, October the 29th at 9 o'clock. I move pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 22 of the Rules of the House of Representatives that the committee authorize the chairman to offer such motion as may be necessary in the House to adopt and pass H.R. 3877, the Mine Communications Technology Innovation Act, as amended. Without objection, so ordered. The last bill we will consider is H.R. 1834, introduced by our colleague on the Natural Resources Committee, Mr. Saxton. I yield myself 5 minutes to describe the bill. The National Ocean Exploration and National Undersea Research Program Act formally authorizes 2 programs at NOAA, an undersea research program and an ocean exploration program. The ocean and coastal areas of our nation support significant economic activity, including recreation, fisheries, and mineral and energy production. Representative Saxton's legislation formalizes NOAA's role as our nation's lead agency in the ocean exploration and science, and ensures they will coordinate their efforts with those with the National Science Foundation and other federal agencies with a role in ocean science and exploration. The staff of our committee has worked with Mr. Saxton to make improvements to the legislation that will be adopted through a manager's amendment. We will continue to work with our colleagues on the Natural Resources Committee to bring this bill to the floor in the near future. I recognize Mr. Hall to present any remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. H.R. 1834, the National Ocean Exploration and Undersea Research Program Act, as you've pointed out, authorizes two programs that are already in existence. It's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. These programs are the Ocean Exploration Program and the National Undersea Research Program. The Ocean Exploration Program was created to coordinate a systemic and strategic effort to search and investigate the deepest reaches of our planet's oceans for the purposes of discovery. H.R. 1834 is a framework to allow for better coordination between NOAA and NSF. As a federal agency responsible for managing living marine and coastal resources, NOAA requires a presence beneath the sea and Great Lakes to better and under the Great Lakes and to better understand the systems under its management. The National Undersea Research Program provides NOAA with the really unique ability to access the undersea environment either directly with submersibles and technical diving or virtually using robots and seafloor observations. The manager's amendment that Mr. Lampson will be offering to this bill is a product of good faith cooperation and negotiation between the majority and minority. This amendment will add greater transparency in the funding process by requiring NOAA to conduct an open and competitive process in the selection of projects that are to receive funding. And it further directs NOAA to engage in collaborative efforts with other federal agencies, non-governmental organizations, and the academic community for greater transfer of research technology and technical expertise. These actions ensure better coordination of research objectives to avoid duplication and the wasting of resources. So, I'd like to thank Representative Saxon of New Jersey for bringing this important bill to our attention and for all his hard work in moving it forward. And I urge all of my colleagues to support the manager's amendment to H.R. 1834 and report the bill favorably out of committee, and I yield back my time.
Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Mr. Rohrabacher is recognized.
Can you hear me there? Thank you. First of all, I'm supportive of the bill, but I would like to note for the record, and as we discuss this, that the actual involvement of these organizations in coastal waters is just as important, I would say, as deep sea exploration. And deep sea exploration is an important function because it is a long-term goal for humanity, let's say, because there are so many resources and so much can be done in the deep sea that we are unaware of it right now, what the potential is. And this bill, I think, is designed to discover that potential. But at the same time, cooperation with NOAA and others, with for example, NASA, has resulted in our ability to track pollution sources along the coast. And those are the type of things that we should also promote and applaud as well. So cooperation among the agencies, which this bill exemplifies, is certainly something that we should support, but should also make sure that NASA is included in that cooperation. I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you very much.
I concur with the coastal representative from California, Mr. Rohrabacher. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? And I ask unanimous consent that the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point, and that the members proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. Without objection, so ordered. The first amendment on the roster is the manager's amendment, offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Lampson.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The clerk, are you ready to report?
I am ready to have an amendment at the desk.
All right. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 1834, offered by Mr. Lampson of Texas.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize Mr. Lampson for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The manager's amendment makes a series of changes throughout the bill to clarify intent, assign clear duties and responsibilities to NOAA for the ocean exploration and undersea research programs, and to ensure funds awarded to non-federal organizations are made through competitive, merit-based procedures. The amendment changes Section 102 of the bill to assign all responsibility for direction of the ocean exploration and undersea research programs to the administrator of NOAA, and clarifies that NOAA's programs are to be coordinated with other federal programs conducting ocean and undersea research and exploration. Section 103 of the bill is amended to direct the administrator of NOAA to implement a competitive process for approving proposals submitted to the program, and to permit the administrator to accept donations of property, data, and equipment that appropriately further the purpose of the programs. And Section 104 is amended to specify that the advisory board created to provide outside advice and expertise to the program will be convened, selected, and operated in accordance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act, except that the board will not expire as required by Section 14 of FACA. Section 105 of the bill is moved to Title III and changed to clarify that the task force will address issues related to both the ocean exploration and the undersea research programs. Sections 202 and 203 are amended to direct NOAA to carry out a program of undersea research, exploration, education, and technology development in cooperation with universities, marine science, and education organizations, and the private sector. The amendment adds a requirement in Section 204 to make the direction of the undersea research program determined by the program director in coordination with the Undersea Research Center directors, publicly available within 3 years of the date of enactment. The amendment clarifies that 10% of the program funds will be retained by the NOAA Undersea Research Program Office for use by the Director for Administration of the program, and to fund priority projects that are not being funded through the regional centers. The awards made through the regional centers will be made through a competitive, merit-reviewed process. The amendment also requires NOAA to recompete the awards to the centers within 5 years of enactment and on a 5-year cycle thereafter. And finally, the amendment eliminates the authorizations in both Titles I and II for fiscal years 2015, 16, and 17 to reduce the total authorization period from 10 years to 7 years. This lowers the overall authorization level of the bill by $297 million. The amendment is a product of a cooperative effort between the committee staff and Mr. Saxon's staff. The amendment improves the bill and ensures NOAA will conduct a world-class program of ocean exploration and undersea research through a productive collaboration with other federal agencies, the academic community, and the private sector. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. And I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Lamson. Is there further discussion on the amendment? If no, the vote occurs on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Are there other amendments? If no, the vote is on the bill. H.R. 1834 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. I recognize Mr. Hall to offer a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee favorably report H.R. 1834 as amended to the House with the recommendation that the bill as amended do pass. Furthermore, I move that staff be instructed to prepare the legislative report, make necessary technical and conforming changes, and that the chairman take all necessary steps to bring the bill before the House for consideration. I yield back.
Questions on the motion to report the bill favorably? Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the desk. The members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure, ending Monday, October 29th at 9 a.m. I move further, pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 22 of the Rules of the House of Representatives, that the committee authorize the chairman of such committee to make such motions as may be necessary in the House to adopt and pass H.R. 1834, the National Ocean Exploration Program Act, as amended. Without objection, so ordered. Let me say to the members, this appears to be our last markup this year. I thank you for your attendance. I think this is probably a record year, and we want to do more than just have numbers. We want to have good content, too, and this is 30-something bills, all of which have been bipartisan. All but one have been unanimous. I thank you for your cooperation, and let's continue next year in the same way. This concludes this
Mr. Chairman, just may I, before you gavel it down, just to commend you for the leadership that you provided to this committee. It has been excellent. It's great to work with you, and I think this is a wonderful committee to be a part of. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
And the staff.
Yeah, I was just say, it helps to have excellent staff, and we do. Thank you very much.